What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to talk about the top 10 comic sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. If you haven't watched one of my top 10 videos before, it's a little different than what you might see on other top 10 videos. I don't just do the top 10 comic sales. I do 5 high sales and 5 low sales. So 5 sales that really met my expectations, exceeded my expectations, and 5 sales that failed to meet my expectations. And where I get my data from is I follow the weekly Heritage comic auction, and I evaluate a bunch of books each week. I do this as part of my market analysis, and I pick out 5 books that surprised me on the high end and 5 on the low end from that sale. So with that, let's get into these sales. Now, number 10, this is a high sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 2 with a CGC 4.0 that sold for $3,240. Now, this is a record in this grade. This is a big book. This is the first appearance of the Vulture, one of Spider-Man's big villains, especially from the Silver Age. It's also the 3rd appearance of Spider-Man. And while he's not as popular of a character as Doc Ock, especially with what we saw in the latest Spider-Man trailer, he is still a very popular character, especially from the 2 Spider-Man movies ago. Now, one thing I'm actually wondering about is if it's possible that he could be the 6th person that we end up seeing as one of the villains for this next Spider-Man movie, because we don't really know who all 6 are yet. So I think that could be something interesting. Might be Mysterio, you know, we have no idea really at this point, but I think that's a possibility that we could end up seeing him show up. Now, there have been some low sales of this book recently that I've talked about, so it's kind of interesting to see this high sale pop in. I had estimated this book at $2,600, and this was 25% above that estimate. And also, like I said, hit a new high. The prior high for this book was $2,500 for May, and that was during the peak sales period. So this is a big jump from then. Now, I always also like to talk about alternatives, because a lot of these books that I talk about are really expensive, maybe not in everybody's budget, and there are a lot of great alternatives for the Vulture, even really early Spider-Man issues, because, for example, Amazing Spider-Man number 7 is his 2nd appearance. So you're getting a book that's in the top 10, the first 10 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and a 2.0 sold on August 22nd for $440, which still isn't cheap, but a lot cheaper than the thousands of dollars you would pay for his first appearance. And a 3.5 sold for $660 on August 9th. So again, not a cheap book, but much more affordable, the mid $100 ranges. And other options you have, though, if you move a little later into the Amazing Spider-Man run, issues 48 and 49 are great Vulture covers, and issue 49 also has Kraven on it. And with Kraven having his own movie coming, all that kind of stuff, that's also a really good option. And you can get mid-grade copies of those books for $100 to $200, so way more affordable, and you can get some pretty nice looking copies. All right, now number 9, this is a low sale. This is a big book too. This is Avengers number 4 with a CGC 2.5 selling for $1,320. And anytime you can get this book at a deal, I think, you know, that's great. Anytime you're getting it under recent fair market value, recent sales. Now, if you're not familiar, this is the first Silver Age appearance of Captain America. His first appearance is in Captain America Comics number 1, way back in the 40s. So, and that book is just prohibitively expensive for just about anybody, tens of thousands of dollars, even for the lowest grades. But this is his first Silver Age appearance, and I had estimated the price of this book at $1,700. This was 22% below that estimate, so I think a pretty good deal. The high sale had even been a little higher. It had been $1,795 back on May 20th. So this was about a 26% discount from that prior high. Now, regardless of what the comic market is doing, up or down, I think this is never really a bad book to pick up. I mean, obviously prices can go up, prices can go down, but this is always going to be a very in-demand book. It's an iconic cover, and just, I think, an incredible book to own. I have a very low-grade copy. It's a 0.5, missing the back cover that looks like it was through a fire, but still a cool book to have. Now, for alternatives, because again, this is a book that is tough to get under $1,000, and I've talked about a lot of alternatives for Captain America before, so I'm going to talk about some different ones this time. One is Avengers number 16. So 12 issues later, it's a great Captain America cover. He's right on the front. He's yelling out the Avengers Assemble tagline he's well known for. It's also the first appearance of the new Avengers. This is when characters like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch join the Avengers. And it's a much more affordable book. 3.5 sold for $215 on July 25th. And a 7.5 CBCS sold for $360 on August 3rd. So definitely a much more affordable book and another just great Captain America cover. Now, another option, if you want to go for a book that's a retelling of his origin, is Captain America number 109. It's also a great solo cover with him on there, kind of like crashing through the cover. And a 6.0 sold for $225 on July 17th. And an 8.0 sold for $186 on July 12th. So keep your eyes open for deals, especially on a book like that, because those are some really reasonable prices for early Captain America in the Silver Age. They are late Silver Age books, because that run didn't start till later in the 60s, but early self-titled Captain America issues. So I think those are some other great options outside of the early appearances of him in Avengers and books like Fantastic Four. All right, number 8. And this is a high sale. This is Captain America number 117 with a CGC 7.5 that sold for $1,260. And I actually talked about the same book a few weeks ago because there was a low sale where I actually picked up that book. So I'm always happy to see books bounce back after I happen to pick one up for a reasonable price. And so that's why I always say it's just good to keep your eyes open, take advantage of those prices when you see a discount to recent fair market values. Now, this was not a record for this book. The record for this book was $1,400, and that was set back in May 12th during kind of like peak comic prices, peak recent prices, but that's still within 10% of that price, so that's a pretty solid sale. Now, I had estimated the price of this book to go for just $900, and this was 40% above that estimate, so big jump over what we've seen for some recent sales for that book. And he has been confirmed that he's coming back in the next Captain America movie. The Falcon is going to be the next Captain America in that movie. So I think it's another one of these books that it's kind of ridiculous that we had seen prices declining in this book, because when he comes back, when you see him on screen again playing that role, I think these books are just going to spike in price again. So I think this is a great key to pick up, especially if you're seeing depressed prices for the Falcon right now. Now, this is another book that I've recommended alternatives in the past as well. For example, Captain America number 118 is his second appearance, but this time I think I'll recommend a different book, and that is the modern alternative for this book, and this is the first time the Falcon actually appears as Captain America, and that's Captain America number 25 from 2014. And this book, you can get it raw under $100 easily, and 9/8 had actually been up over $600 during the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show, and recent sales, a recent 9/8 sale was $206.50 on July 12th, and so it's down over 60% since those prior highs. I think that's a steal to pick up right now, because that's the type of book that will just spike again in the future when we see the Falcon on screen again as Captain America. All right, number 7, and this is a low sale, and this is one of my favorite books. This is Silver Surfer number 1 with a CGC 6.0 selling for $1,200. And I love this cover. I have always loved this cover ever since I was a kid. I actually talked about it on Newbie Comics when I was on his show earlier this week, and just everything Silver Surfer and Galactus had gotten extremely expensive over the last few months. The prices had just gone through the roof on them, so it's not really surprising that we're seeing some pullbacks in these books. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,650. This was 27% below that estimate, so pretty big discount on that book. And the high was that $1,650 on June 4th. Now, remember, you've always got to look at what the prices of these books were, say, a year ago. A year ago, this book was going for around $700 in this grade. So even at $1,200 at this reduced price, it's still up over 70% since then. So yes, we are seeing some retractions in the prices of these books, but we are still seeing them at prices well above where they were a year ago. Now, this is one of those books that already kind of is an alternative for other Silver Surfer keys. Fantastic Four 48 and 49 are really the big books for Silver Surfer, but if you want another great cover, one that I really like that I'd recommend is Tales to Astonish number 93. This is a great cover with him on the cover, with Silver Surfer on the cover with the Hulk, and it's got flames on the cover, just really awesome imagery, and so that's a cool book to pick up if you're looking for kind of a cover buy for Silver Surfer. A 6.0 sold for just $275 on July 14th. Now, higher grades can be expensive. A 9.0 sold for $1,260 on August 16th because it is a Silver Age book. It is a very popular book, but you can definitely get into a nice mid-grade copy for just a few $100s. All right, number 6, and this is a high sale, and I love when I get to talk about these books. I love when I see these books come up for sale in these auctions. This is Famous Funnies number 209 with a CGC 4.5 selling for $1,140. This was a record in this grade. If you've watched my channel, you know about these books. I talk about these books fairly regularly, but this is a Frank Frazetta book. This is a run that he did in Famous Funnies from issues 209 to 216, and I think they have some of the best Frank Frazetta sci-fi covers of all time. Just some incredible covers in this run, and I had estimated the price of this book at $800. This was 43% above my estimate. And another book that I'm happy to see higher prices on it because I purchased a 5.5 a few months ago for about $800, so it's fun to see these high sales for this book as well, because people are really starting to go after and appreciate these Frazetta books from this run and realizing how uncommon they are, how difficult they are to come by. Now, the prior record in this book had been $810, and that was all the way back in 2019. However, it had sold for just $780 as recently as June 21st. So this is a pretty big jump since that June 21st sale. And like I said, these Frazetta covers just seem to be getting more and more in demand from that run. So whenever they come up for sale, it just seems like they hit higher and higher numbers. Now, there aren't really alternatives for this cover. If you're looking for books from this run, like I said, it's issues 209 through 216. My favorite cover from the entire run is issue 214, and that one has gotten very expensive. A 5.5 sold for $3,840 back in February, and I can guarantee you it would sell for quite a bit more right now. I think a lot of people, their favorite cover is 213. I don't have a copy of that one yet. I'd love to get one, but that one is also very, very expensive from this run. But check out issues 209 through 216. There's a ton of great covers from that run, especially if you're into sci-fi type covers. It also includes some fantasy type covers, like issue 209 that was this high sale this week. All right, now number 5, this is a low sale, going back to Amazing Spider-Man. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 18 with a CGC 8.0 that sold for just $870. Now that may seem expensive, but this is early Spider-Man, and selling for $870 for an 8.0, I mean, this is also a key book. This is the first appearance of Ned Leeds, who is Peter's best friend in the current Spider-Man movies, if you're not familiar with who that character actually is. And he's actually one of the people that becomes one of the iterations of the Hobgoblin. And so that's really what has been driving prices in books like this, because people are expecting to potentially see a character like the Hobgoblin in the future in either the MCU or the Sony version of Spider-Man. The other thing that's key for this book is that this is also an early appearance of the Sandman, and people are thinking they saw a character that might be the Sandman in that Spider-Man trailer. So these Sandman books, these early Sandman books, could definitely see an increase in price. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,200. This is 28% below that estimate. And, you know, it's never a bad thing to get a Silver Age Spider-Man book for a discount to recent prices. And with what we saw in the recent trailer with Sandman and what we think is the Green Goblin, we're almost certain is the Green Goblin, but some people still think it might be the Hobgoblin. Definitely a book that I think has some room to move leading into that Spider-Man movie. Now, prices have kind of been all over the place with this book recently. It sold for $1,200 on June 14th, and then $1,560 on August 2nd, but a 7.0 sold for $728 on June 30th, so that's why I thought maybe that $1,560 sale had been a little high, why I estimated it at $1,200, but it went even well below that, you know, hitting $870. But regardless, getting a $690 discount in about 3 weeks is never a bad deal on early Spider-Man, so I think this person probably got a good deal on that book when they picked it up. Now, for alternatives, this is one of those books that it's early Spider-Man, but it's not really early Spider-Man. It's not, the first 10 issues, and so you can get it more affordably, especially raw books. A 4.0 sold for $318 on August 23rd, and so this is a book that you can get into for just a few $100s. You're still getting that key first appearance, but if you want maybe a different book, an alternative, you could also go for Amazing Spider-Man 238, which is the first appearance of the Hobgoblin. However, that book has just gone through the roof over the last 6 months, and so that's one that I'd maybe be a little cautious on picking up, because I think the prices have gotten really high on it, on expectations that people were going to see that character in this next Spider-Man movie, but it really looks like we're going to get the Green Goblin, not the Hobgoblin. So just something to be wary of, that prices might come down on that book, and you may just want to be a little patient for ASM 238. All right, now number 4, this is a high sale. Finally, I get to talk about a DC book. This is Adventure Comics number 210. This is a CGC 3.5 that sold for a record $2,160. And this not just is a DC book, but it's also a dog-based key, which I love because I'm a huge dog fan. and so this is the first appearance of Crypto, the super dog. It's a Golden Age key from 1955, so late Golden Age. And this is an expensive book. This is a very popular book, but I had estimated the price at $1,500. This was 44% above that estimate. Now, the prior record was $2,000, but that was back from August of 2020. And since then, it had a $1,575 sale after that, and a 3.0 had sold for $1,320 on July 5th. So that's why I had it estimated around $1,500. Now, it is a very popular character because it's one of the few dog-based characters, so for all of the dog lovers that are out there, it's just a cool book to get. Another one that you may be interested in if you're trying to pick up dog-based characters is Ace the Bat Hound, and his first appearance is in Batman number 92. It's also a pricey book, but not as expensive as this one. They actually both came out in the same year, both in 1955, so there must have been a lot of demand at that point for dog-based superheroes. But an alternative for this book, because that Adventure Comics 210 is very expensive, is to get Adventure Comics 214, which is the second appearance of Crypto. And a 5.5 sold for $312 on August 23rd, and a 3.0 sold for just $132 on August 9th. So you can get that book for just about 10 times less than the first appearance. And from what I've talked about in other videos, that's generally what you'll see. You'll see second appearances selling for about 10 times less than first appearances. That tends to be the trend for those books. All right, now number 3, this is a low sale. This is Fantastic Four number 52 with a CGC 4.5 selling for $990. And honestly, this is a book that I've been concerned about for a while. I have seen the prices had continued to go up even after Chadwick Boseman's death, and I think that's risky because we don't think we're going to get this character again. Disney has said that they're not planning on recasting this character. We don't know for sure. Now, it is a key issue, but it had gone up very high, and appearances in the MCU, I've said this before, like it or not, have a big impact on the values of these books. And so if we aren't going to see that character again, or his character is not going to be recast for maybe years, then I think it's likely that we will see continued declines in the price of this book. Now, I had estimated the price of the book at $1,400. This was 29% below that estimate. The high sale was $1,500 back on April 5th, and it's jumped around a lot since then, but there had been recent sales around that $1,400 number. Now, a year ago, this book was selling for $600, so it's still up about 65% since then, so I'd still be a little cautious with this one. This is one that, like I said, I'm not real confident about the future value of this book. It is still a key, it's still going to hold value, but maybe it has some room to still drop. Now, alternatives for this one, like I said, if I'm not really recommending buying books related to this character right now, it's hard to give alternatives. However, if you are really interested in buying books for Black Panther, his second appearance is just one issue later in Fantastic Four number 53, and that same 4.5 will cost you about $150. So it's significantly less than the $990 price that we saw this last week. And even higher grades are pretty affordable. An 8.5 sold for $525 on July 13th, where a similar graded copy of Fantastic Four 52 is going to cost you $4,000 to $4,500. So just if you do want to get into that character, maybe something that's a little less risky that is not going to drop in total value as much, is the second appearance, is Fantastic Four 53. All right, now number 2, and this was the most surprising high sale that I saw that entire auction. And this was a crazy sale. I actually texted one of my friends right afterwards when I saw this sale come through. This was Savage Tales #1 with a CGC 9.6 that sold for $5,760. And I was thinking about making some kind of joke about it because it was a huge sale and this is the first appearance of Man-Thing, but you know, I won't do it. But this is the first appearance and origin of Man-Thing. It's in a magazine. This is a larger format book. This is a magazine. It's not a normal comic-sized book. And it's got a really cool Conan cover that's done by John Buscema. And so I think he is one of the best cover artists from the late Silver, early Bronze Age. He just has some amazing covers. And it's a cool book. It has gotten really expensive lately. Now, I had estimated the price at $3,000. This was 92% over that estimate. Like I said, just a monster sale for this book. The prior record had been $3,200, and that was from March of this year, but just before that, it had sold for just $2,000 in February, and earlier in the prior year, it was going for around $1,500. So from that $1,500 range, this is up around 300%, just massive gains for this book. Now, the question of why is this book going up? That they might end up including that character in future Disney Plus shows or movies, especially as Marvel is moving into more horror-themed or like dark universe-themed content. And so I think that's really what's maybe driving the prices on this book. Now, there are some great alternatives for this character. One that I really like is his first solo title, which is Man-Thing #1, and he had actually 2 solo titles. There's one that came earlier in the 70s and one that came later. I like the one that was earlier, that's 1974. That's the one I would recommend going after, but it is much more affordable than Savage Tales. A 8.5 sold for just $168 on July 19th, and a 9.0 sold for $225 on July 5th, so a much more affordable book. Now, another good option is Fear #10. Now, if you look at the book, the cover, it'll say Adventure into Fear, but it's always listed under Fear if you look it up on places like Go Collect, that kind of thing. So Fear #10, it's actually his first solo story. So that's very similar to Marvel Spotlight #28, which is the first solo story for Moon Knight. Fear #10 is the first solo story for Man-Thing. And again, this is a much more affordable book. 8.5 sold for just $140 on July 19th, and a 7.0 sold for $82 on May 10th. So definitely a book that you can get much more affordably, and if we do see that character eventually appear in some way in the MCU, could be just a big explosion in the prices for that book. And Savage Tales #1, that could be kind of hinting at what we'll see with these other books that feature that character. All right, now #1, and this is the most surprising low sale that I saw this week. This is Marvel Superheroes #13 with a CGC 8.5 that sold for just $866. Now, if you're not familiar with this book, this is the first appearance of Carol Danvers. And this book went off like a rocket ship when the first Captain Marvel movie came out, when she was cast, and there's just a lot of excitement around that character. And then the movie had mixed reviews. You know, some people like it, some people don't like it. I thought it was fine. And that really caused the price of the book to drop quite a bit from those highs. Now, it did kind of go up and down after that with her appearances in the Avengers movies, that kind of thing. But it's definitely down from its high, but this was a very low sale. Now, I really like this book. I think it's a cool cover. It's actually the second appearance of Captain Marvel, the character that's in the white on the cover. I think it's just an awesome book. It's a square-bound book, tough to get in high grade. However, despite the price for this one, I'm still wary of buying copies of this book now because I just keep seeing prices kind of go down. Now, I did used to have 2 graded copies of this. I used to have an 8.5 and a 9, but I've sold them both in the past. I currently have a raw copy that I think is somewhere in the 8.5 range that I'll probably send it in to get graded at some point. But I had estimated the price of this book at $1,300, and this was 33% below that estimate. Now, it had had a $1,425 sale on April 30th and a $1,500 sale on April 1st, plus an 8.0 had had a $900 sale on July 22nd. So this may have just been a really good deal. It may be that this isn't just a continued decline, especially since we're going to see this character in another Marvel movie. She's going to be in The Marvels, and so it may be that this is just a temporary decline, that we'll see the prices of this book come back up. That's possible because, like I said, I think it is a really cool cover. I like this book, and it's actually a pretty rare book, especially in high grades. So, for example, that 8.5 is in the top 10% of graded copies. But if you compare that to Marvel Superheroes number 12, which is the first appearance of Captain Marvel, and it's also a square-bound book, an 8.5 for that book is in the top 34% of copies. So that tells you how hard it is to get this specific book in high grade. It is very difficult. And that's why that book tends to cost so much more. So even at this reduced price, even though prices were higher and this has come down, Marvel Superheroes number 12, first appearance of Captain Marvel, an 8.5 sold for just $395 on July 7th. So this book, issue 13, still sells for over double what issue 12 sells for. So it tells you that it still has a lot of value to it. It's still a valuable book. However, it is down a lot from where it had been during those those peak times when the first Captain Marvel movie came out. Now, for alternatives, again, this is a book that I wouldn't necessarily go for an alternative because once you get out of those really high grades, it's actually relatively affordable to pick up. A 3.5 sold for $250 on August 16th, and a 4.0 sold for just $170 on August 10th. So definitely a book that for a couple $100, $200-300, you can get a lower grade, 3 to 4 range grade copy of this book. Now, if you do want to go for an alternative, another good alternative is Miss Marvel number 1. And that book in a 9.8 is very expensive. You know, that book in a 9.8 is going to cost you anywhere from about $1,200 to $1,500. But after you get out of that 9.8 range, it gets much more affordable very quickly. A 9.4 sold for just $228 on August 16th. And if you get raw copies, under $100 is pretty easy for that book. But we'll see what they continue to do with this character. Like I said, they definitely have plans for her with at least one more movie, the Marvels movie. So I think it's still something that's worthwhile to pick up now, but it is something that you may want to sell leading into that movie, depending on if it's a book that you want to hold long-term or not. All right, so thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. This is my top 10 comic sales, the 5 high, 5 low. I always enjoy going over these. I think it's fun talking about the ones that, you know, both beat expectations and fail to meet those expectations, just because it also gives you an idea that there are good deals out there, you know, outside of those big high sales that often get a lot of press coverage, that kind of thing. There are lower sales too. There are things that you can look out for, books that you can pick up at a discount to fair market value. If you enjoyed this video, if you thought it was useful, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other content that I've made. I've got the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.